Scholarships and graduate fellowships. And the reason that we decided to do this for you guys is because there are so many opportunities for you, and a lot of you are looking into going into grad school, medical school, study abroad, doing all kinds of things. And so this is a really good resource for you. So there are 4 people who are going to be, well, 3 people who are going to be speaking today. And I'll give you a little bit of introduction to them so you know kind of the order we're going in. So from the Graduate College, the Office of Fellowships and Community Engagement, we have Georgia Ehlers, who's going to be speaking first, and then Shelley Horn-Smith, who is here. And then following them from the Honors College is Dr. Carter Walter. She's the Assistant Dean for Student Engagement, and she will also be introducing Danielle Barefoot, who is the Assistant Director for Nationally Competitive Scholarships. So lots of information. Perk your ears. We're going to start. Thanks.
Thank you. And we always love talking to this group. A lot of, when we get our awards in the spring, we really start to see how many people got it. And it's a very successful group. So I just want to encourage you from the get-go to try, to apply for some things. A lot of you are thinking about grad school. And well, here we are in Georgia. That's Shelley over there. Shelley's really the person we want to talk to. And she's over in the grad center. It's that big building at First and Sharon, which you'll want to know. She's not always here. How to pay for grad school is the first thing. And I'm sure many of you are familiar. You've had a TA in your life. That is the most common way that grad students fund their grad school. However, there's a whole big world out there. There's loans, maybe you've worked and saved, or your parents have helped with that. Sometimes people work for organizations that have employee benefits. The U of A is one of those, Raytheon is another, IBM, a lot of, I don't know, so they did a huge survey, and something like 70% of the 30,000 agencies surveyed actually had employee benefits. There are tuition waivers that often come from a particular department. The assistantships we've already mentioned can be in your department or a lab, or they can be in another department on campus. It doesn't have to be in your particular field. If you know another language, you can teach or something. There are plenty of scholarships internally at a university, and that's something that you will always want to file the FAFSA for, because a lot of those require that you show need, or you're kind of on file in the system. And these are the donors, you see the names at McHale and things like that, where people are major donors. But many of them also set up scholarship funds. So your college probably is kind of the main source for that. You can also get a handle on them at the U of A through something called Scholarship Universe. You can, maybe you already know about it because it was set up for undergrads originally, but you fill out some information and it haunts you for the rest of your life. And then the thing that Shelley and I work with the most are extramural fellowships. And Carmen will talk about the ones that she manages also. We team up a lot of times, and sometimes there are even some in your department and your academic field that may not come through us, but there may be training grants or other things. So there are all these ways to keep from going deeply in debt. A recent article from fabulous U.S. News and World Report suggested 5 strategies to pay for grad college. So I thought they were pretty good. It kind of sums up all those ways of funding that we just told you about. Get somebody else to pay for it, work on campus, secure a grad school external scholarship or fellowship, borrow smart, don't go into debt. Carmen heard me go off the rails on this the other day. It's just keep it in line with what you expect to make upon graduation. And I just saw an article that said students overestimate what they will make when they graduate, so do the research. And then finally, don't forget their tax credits. If there's a Roth IRA in your family or that you happen to have access to, that can be used for education. And some people, like a very small percentage at this point in time, actually qualify for the federal loan forgiveness program. I'm always optimistic that it's going to be revamped and work well, but it is out there. This is an old photo that everybody I'm presenting with has seen 52 times, but it's from the little prince, and I've written a lot of grants in my life, and I always think about grant money, fellowship money, as sort of the elephant in the boa constrictor. It may move slightly from year to year or over a decade or more, but it's always there somewhere. Occasionally, there'll be different Congresses or presidents that try to get rid of programs. Sometimes they go away, sometimes other ones start up. But it's always there in some shape or form. And the trick as a grant writer, which I'm going to consider you all to be, is to understand what the priorities are, what the goals and mission is of the funding agencies, and think about how to make yourself an eligible and appropriate applicant for whatever is the hot topic of the year or the decade in some cases. At the U of A, we're lucky we have some searchable databases. Several are subscriptions from the main library, mainly Pivot and Grant Forward. And these are excellent resources, especially if you're planning to zoom off after graduation and work and may not have access to them. So take time now over a summer when you're not extremely busy, and don't spend 4 days on it, but just spend a little time setting it up, seeing how it works, and doing a little search for yourself. And just sort of imagine yourself as a beginning grad student, or doing research for a thesis or a dissertation, or writing up a dissertation, or traveling somewhere, and see what's out there for that in your discipline and for whoever you are. And that's just a nice thing to have on file so you can sort of make a plan for yourself. There are many other databases, and we've listed a few here. I think Jennifer will give you the PowerPoint, so you're going to need to write them all down. So for internal funding, really, how do people get information in this day and age? It's my perpetual topic. And I think a lot of times as a student, I did find out information from people I know. So talk to the people that you know who have gotten funding. And that might include faculty, a TA, your lab mentor, somebody, one of your peers, and just see how they handle it. Because a lot of times, that is how we find out about stuff, in spite of the overwhelming amount of information available online. And hopefully you're cultivating or have cultivated an advisor and somebody in the faculty, so they're a really good resource. If you're looking at moving into a different discipline in your undergrad work, you especially want to figure out what the funding picture is in this other area. So there are a lot of ways to do research through even looking at articles that you're reading that might credit a funder, or looking at annual reports of, I don't know, the Cancer Foundation, anything like that. So you can kind of figure out, look at your professional organization for your discipline. So there are a lot of ways to figure out where the money is. Most of the federal agencies that give out research grants have an awards database on their federal website. And you can just go out, you can put in University of Arizona or MIT, wherever you plan to go, and just see what's funded there. And is that in a field that interests you? Is there money? Check out the professor that got it. So you can do a lot of surreptitious looking around before you get to where you're going. And don't be afraid that, especially there's always a grad coordinator in every academic department, don't be afraid to talk with them and say, I'd really love to do this, do you know of any funding? We get those emails constantly. So there are people around that are supposed to know. Okay. Just a little quick overview on the research assistantships. Usually the question we get from people coming here is there a central database? Who hires them? How do I get one? And at the U of A, it may vary at different schools, but at the U of A, it's decentralized. Each department does their own thing. I think like in the IT area, maybe you'll see that advertised more than some. Sometimes they get advertised on the departmental listserv or something. But if you have qualifications in the field, just get in there and ask, because who knows where they're going to be. Handshake is another place they might show up, or like think tank, or some of the non-academic kinds of assistantships. And of course, they fall into teaching, research, and another category called outreach. And there are even things like assistantships for being at Res Life, free housing also. So if that's kind of in your wheel barn, check that out too. They all hire separately. It's really frustrating. And assistantships are pretty good. They waive non-resident tuition, 100% of that, half or all of your in-state tuition. They give you health insurance as long as you sign up for it, which is another $2,500 next year. And they'll give you a stipend. So it's not a bad deal. That's many benefits. And then look at those other sort of larger university options. Like, and this is at the U of A, but whatever school you're looking at might have like an access fellowship if you're first generation or diverse student that they're building student base for. There are others that are specific training grants or specific grants for a particular population. And again, how do you find them? Talk to people. Use the tools, the website, the grad college website, faculty. So they're all there. Okay, external funding, the most fun stuff. I should say, though, that any funding that you apply for is a good experience, whether you get the funding or not. You may not think that at the time, and you will most certainly be rejected by a grantor at some point in your life, most likely. However, every experience builds your capacity, and it also gives you the opportunity to think about what you're doing, why you're a good fit, and each subsequent application will improve because of that. So I like to tell people, like especially the internal stuff, you got into this program, yay, you've already done one. You apply for grad school. That's another, you get experience as you're going along. Use some of the work you do in your lab or in your classes to sort of build the pieces that go into your external fellowship. And Shelley's going to give an example, but she'll talk about that more. All right, we have 2 minutes left. Okay, so quickly. There are all kinds, but think of it this way. Early graduate study, travel awards, awards for particular populations, the summer stuff, internships, externships, co-ops, practicums, workshops, thesis and dissertation research, writing support, and then if you get the doctorate and move on, there's often postdoctoral research awards. And if you're in some fields, like the arts and the humanities especially, they only like to give awards, so forget them. It's not that bad, but it's more common in those areas. The sources, the largest source is federal government. And just kind of learn what funds and the discipline that you're interested in, just by looking and asking. Sometimes there are international sources of funding. More often I see U.S. sources funding things internationally, so often you can find a way to go abroad with somebody that's a foundation or something, Gates Foundation, whatever, that's funding something. Many foundations are out there, particularly in the health arena. Professional organizations often have a little funding, like especially to go to a conference, which is something you definitely want to do. And then other universities, there are things at Harvard and other schools that you can apply for even though you're a student here, or not at that school, I should say. And then, especially like in farm talks, pharmacy, some of the engineering disciplines, you'll find a lot of industry and commercial kind of support in there. So it's everywhere. One of my favorites is I had a student who was in psychology, and she was doing something that required the use of a waterbed. So she went to a little waterbed store, and they gave her a waterbed. How's that? It's really funny. Here's just a few examples of external fellowships, and there are a lot more. These tend to be sort of on the early side. And yay, it's Shelley's turn.
Okay, so again, I'm Shelley. Thanks for having us. I'm going to just give you an example of applying for a fellowship. And I was remembering sitting there when a little while ago a student came into my office and we went over applying for, the example we're giving is the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship. We went over everything and then I said, thanks for coming in. And she got up to leave and she said, I can do this. And I thought, oh, I forget. Like, we work with these all the time, and we say, do this, just go ahead and do it, you know. And so it's our everyday work. But the process of applying to a fellowship can be a little intimidating. But I just want to encourage you that it's kind of not that hard. If you're going to apply for graduate school, then you can do this. So, how many of you are juniors now? Okay, and then how many of you are seniors? This is great. Okay. The National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship. Do most of you know about this? Most of you, yeah, okay. We're just going to go in detail about the process of applying for the fellowship. So this is a great one. It provides 3 years of support over 5 years, and it also has a number of additional benefits. Oh dear, did I do something wrong here? Sorry. Do it first again. I can keep talking if you don't mind. Okay. So it also has a number of additional benefits, and you can apply your senior year of graduate school. Thank you. I think I finished. Okay. You can apply your senior year of graduate school, or if you don't go right into graduate school, you can apply before you go into graduate school. And then you can apply either your first or second year of graduate school. You have to decide. And you'll have to talk to your advisors about which decision you make. They have citizenship requirements, and we talked about class standing, and then field of study. I know some of you are in the medical arena, and so I just want to encourage you not to write this off right away, because it says we do not fund medical research, which is true. And that means for many of you, like if you're going to medical school, there's other things you can apply for, but not this. However, we've had people in pharmacy apply for this and get it. We've had people in cancer biology apply for this and get it. So if you are focusing on the basic science, then this can still be a possibility for you. Okay, we talked about this a bit. Okay, this is a really nice fellowship because it's so clear and consistent. So they have the deadlines not only for this year, but also for the following year. So they're due at the end of October. They have kind of staggered deadlines. And then the awards are made in the spring. So what's required? So you're going to have personal background information. This is online that you put in information like you would a CV. All the information would be on your CV, but it's in a system called Fastlane. And it does take a little bit of getting used to. Any system, any grant will probably have a system like this. And you want to get into it as soon as you can and just figure out what it's like in there. Fastlane is actually pretty user-friendly compared to most. Then you have a personal statement, which is 3 pages long. And what you want to do in the personal statement is take your best outcome of your life and tell them how you're going to get there. So what you've done in the past, and then how you're going to get to do the work that you would love to do. If you, as a scientist or an engineer, you would succeed in doing those things that you would love to do. So that's kind of the job of the personal statement. And then the graduate research study plan. The instructions for this online are, I think, slightly misleading because it says, tell us about something you want to do. But you have to give a very clear research plan about a project that you actually could do in graduate school with a research question, with the methods, with the data analysis and expected conclusions. So that's a very specific document. So 5 pages, so easy. It's not, but it's also very similar to other documents that you'll write in the future. And people who write this are very grateful that they applied because it gets you talking with your advisor about the work that you want to do. It gets you doing some research about your own a project that you'd like to do yourself. So it's really actually kind of a great process. And then you need your transcripts and the names and emails of reference writers. So how do they decide? This is really key when you are applying for fellowships. The review criteria for NSF is, they have 2 review criteria, intellectual merit and broader impact. And I think when you read through the descriptions of their review criteria, it kind of makes more sense for most of NSF's money goes to these big grants that go to universities usually to do a project. So it's kind of more project-based, but you have to kind of think in your mind what this means for an individual. And we have lots of examples online, so you can give you some idea. But basically, intellectual merit is how does this advance your field? How are you answering questions, filling gaps that need to be filled? And then broader impacts is the question, why should taxpayers pay for you to go to graduate school? So how are you going to reach beyond and improve life through your work? And actually, how those questions are, how that review criteria is addressed varies quite a bit according to discipline. So how that is answered in anthropology is really different than in physics or chemistry. So you want to talk to people about how you can respond to these review criteria. And when you're writing, it needs to be very clear how you are answering those criteria. So how do I become competitive? What you're doing now, this summer research is a really great start. You should have a fairly good academic record. These actually do not always go to 4.0 students, but it does need to be solid to show that you can do the work that you're proposing to do. And then innovative research. So NSF is about doing transformative new things. And so your work should be interesting, not just to you, but to other people as well. Get to know your professors and employers. So those letters of recommendation, I think we have a slide on it, are really key. And so it's important that people know you and can speak well of you because they are kind of the wild card that they need to be very strong for these. Volunteer, intern, and research. NSF really does put value in those broader impacts. So it's hard as a student to have time for sort of doing things like volunteering, but it does pay back in the end in many ways. And for NSF, it is important for them, for these grants. Consider your language study and travel. Most grants really value international connections, including the Natural Science Foundation. Reflect on your long-term goals. So all of us, including the people who will read the proposals, know that your goals can change and life can happen. But it still is so a proposal that says, this is what I want to do. And have something solid that this person is aiming to do. And we know that that person won't necessarily succeed, but there's something really nice about that. It creates like this compelling arc, and so people are inspired to help you along the way. I guess my key, one thing I want to say too is that you probably have like maybe several things that you want to do, but if you can, as long as you're being honest, sort of focus on that one thing that would be compelling to NSF, then I would recommend that you do that as long as you're doing it honestly. So leadership is really important for these. So if you can step into a leadership role, that's a great idea. And pursue what really interests you. So this is so like American, follow your heart. But this goes back to the people who have this thing that they want to do. So like there's been so many students that come in and you think, really, you're going to study belly dancing, or really you're interested in, I forget what else, but this seems a little perplexing, this certain kind of art. But if it's very compelling to you, you will figure out how to make connections to things that are important. And you'll also be compelled to do the work really well. So it's a careful balance of pursuing what you want to really do, because that will give you the energy that you need to do excellently, and then connecting it to things that are of concern to other people, that will also be compelling to them. So timing matters, and I think I kind of addressed this, but most graduate fellowships are going to be due in the fall, and then most awards will be made in the spring, and then the funding kicks in either summer or fall. So you need to have a spreadsheet, and you need to start thinking about things, actually ideally several years ahead. So Georgia and I are looking for some people to nominate for some dissertation fellowships, and I'm contacting people, they say, I think I'm too early for this, because I still have 3 years. But for this fellowship that I'm referring to, you need to have 2 years left by the time that you get the award. So actually, even though it seems far away, if they are nominated in the fall and awarded in the spring, then by the time the funding comes through, they're going to have 2 years left. So have that spreadsheet and think about your timing. It's really super important. We always have people coming in too late, and it's so frustrating. Letters of recommendation. Again, these are just hugely important, and hopefully you have some good relationships. I think, like, as an undergrad, I always felt intimidated by my professors and felt like maybe they didn't have time for me. But do make appointments to go and talk to them, invite them out for coffee, ask them about their research. So express your sincere interest and invite them into your life in ways that are appropriate. Because most people who are faculty got into the job because they like teaching. So, but it does take a little work on your part to make those connections. And then just be organized. It's so hard for professors when they say, I need a letter, and you say, I need a letter in 2 weeks. So, warn them ahead of time, let them know which things you're going to be applying for, and when the dates are, send them your drafts. Just be really organized when you're asking for letters of recommendation. So I wanted to let you know about a few people I've worked with who have been successful. Often I think students think that these are people who are shining stars. And actually in the 7 years that I've done this job, there's been like 2 or 3 who really are, and they're amazing, and they just get everything, and they're brilliant and have all these publications. But most people who get these are normal people. So, and actually I have a number of international students here because Saleh on the top, he just finished his dissertation, but the first time he came to talk to me and gave me a draft of something to read, I could barely read it. Like, he had so far to go. But Saleh is so persistent and so polite and so kind, and he kept working and kept revising, and he never got a huge grant, but he's got a whole long list of $2,000-ish awards and support from faculty, and has really been able to bring together some great funding that's allowed him to do some very interesting work. Sonia is in Arid Lands. She's on your right. And she's from Paraguay, and she first applied to a Spanish agency, and she got an interview, and she didn't get it. And then she applied to some funding for graduate school in Florida, I think, and she got accepted, and then she got a little award, and she kept getting these little awards. And then when she wanted, so she got her master's, I think, in Florida. And this is the key. If you can get just a few of these, even if they're small awards, you start getting a little bit of a track record. And so by the time she wanted to come to the U of A for graduate school, they gave her the University Fellows Award, which is support for a whole year along with a number of other benefits. So even though you might not get the NSF-GRP, if you have a good application, then you can use those. Obviously you have to modify it, but use those for the smaller ones and start getting a little bit of a track record on this. Down there, Brandon Hellman, I worked with him. So he applied, so he used to be able to apply twice in graduate school for the NSF-GRP. And, oh shoot, can I have 2 more minutes? I really enjoy stories here. And he got honorable mention the first time, which is such a bummer because you're so close. And then the second year, he got honorable mention again. But then after that, he had been applying for multiple things, not just the NSF-GRP. But he got a really good funding from the Department Department of Defense. So it did pay off in the end, despite being so close with the NSF JRP. Andrew, over on your left, is in nutritional sciences, and he applied for a big award in nutritional sciences and didn't get it. He applied to NIH, and this is a key thing for you guys applying to NIH. What he told me is that you have to be really smart about what institute or center you apply to, because he is doing work, I think, with turmeric and breast cancer, and I don't know if I have the story exactly right, but like the Center for Cancer, they get so many applications, but he applied for another center, which is much higher success rate. And I think he had to do reviews or revisions once, but he actually did get the NIH F30 in the end. So he has done really well as well. So, good luck. And I just want to say that we have a lot of help for people applying for fellowships, particularly if you're thinking of applying to the NSF JRP this fall. Send me an email and we can be of help to you. So thanks, and feel free to contact me with questions.
So I'm Carla Welter. I'm the Assistant Dean for Student Engagement in the Honors College here at the U of A. I want to also introduce my new colleague, Danielle Barefoot. She is the new Assistant Director for the Office of Nationally Competitive Scholarships. Any of you who decide to apply for an award in the next couple of years during your undergraduate time will most likely work with Danielle, get to know her a little bit, find out a little bit more about which awards might be the best kind of fit for you. So memorize her details at the end of this presentation or chat with either she or I so you can learn a little bit more about what would fit for you. So we are an office that is housed in the Honors College. I know a good number of you are probably honor students, but not all of you are, and that is just fine. Any student at the university is eligible to apply for scholarships, whether you're in the Honors College or not. So just know that going in, you don't have to be an honor student. Of course, a lot of great students are in honors, and so there's a natural fit there, but we know there are plenty of good students who, for whatever reason, are not based in the Honors College, and you are welcome to use our office wherever it makes sense for you. So we are doing things like today, raising awareness about awards, and we also are wanting to make sure you know about the particular scholarships and fellowships that fit your current situation, that fit your longer term goals, that help you do the kinds of things you might like to do. And then we also help to facilitate interview processes for some of our awards. They do require interviews, they require other kinds of university endorsements. There are some awards that don't require that. You can just apply directly and you wouldn't need to go through your home institution, but I can just tell you the students who do go through, get some support, get some help, are more competitive because you have additional sets of eyes and people with some expertise who can help you see where maybe you have some blind spots and you don't see where your application might not be as strong as it could be. That's where our expertise can come in to help. So I know Georgia and Shelley have talked about this a little bit already, but I just want to add my 2 cents. You have been through a competitive process. You went through a competitive process to be in this room today. Well, like not to walk into the room, but to become part of the program that you are participating in this summer and maybe even before this summer. So you have had to think through your story. You've had to think through, why do I fit the undergraduate biology research program? What is it about my background, my interests that makes sense? So you're already, you have some skills to bring to the table that will serve you well if you decide to apply for some other kinds of awards. But I have found in my years at the U of A that a lot of times undergraduates have a little bit of an inferiority complex when it comes to national competitive awards. I think maybe you're not that student, but I have talked to plenty of students who will start a conversation by saying, I'm not sure if I'm a good fit. I don't know if I should really apply for this, but ... And oftentimes, students are a potentially really good fit and do bring a lot to the table. But in their heads is this voice that says, well, I go to the U of A. Are students at the U of A actually competitive for stuff like this? Isn't that the domain of Stanford and Harvard and all those people at all those places? And the answer is yes and no. We have students from the U of A who have done just as well as students from some of those highly competitive institutions. And the best students here, and you're part of that group, the best students here can compete with the best students anywhere. So I want you to get the naysaying voice out of your head that tells you, I shouldn't compete for this because I wouldn't be competitive. So I think one of my colleagues also mentions that the likelihood of winning awards, having said that, in some cases isn't super high. There are tons of people who do apply. So if your only reason for applying for an award is to win it and that's it, and you would count it an unsuccessful experience if you didn't win, then maybe you don't want to apply. Because I think you have to go in with the attitude that I have something to gain from the self-reflection and from the experience of applying, connecting with faculty who will write for me, thinking through my own goals, thinking through my fit for X, Y, or Z. And sometimes that will result in you winning a fellowship that allows you to do just that, and sometimes it won't. But you will hopefully have gained something valuable for yourself that will serve you in other kinds of parts of your life. So you'll further your intellectual development. If you do apply and you have an opportunity to win some awards, you would gain potentially some international experiences. Have any of you studied abroad? A couple of you? Any of you think you might like to do some kind of international experience during undergrad or maybe right after? Cool. So there are definitely some awards I'll talk about in brief today that would enable you to go overseas, gain some international experience, and build some cross-cultural relationships, whether you are fully committed to a STEM career or perhaps thinking about something else. Applying also can help you develop some leadership skills and build some networks, and networks are really important in life. So this is a small sampling of scholarships that might be appropriate for you, particularly STEM kind of oriented folks. But there are a lot of other ones that I could talk about, that Danielle could talk about, that might be a nice fit that I'll mention in brief as well. So these scholarships, by and large, are scholarships you would apply for during your undergraduate years. None of these are scholarships you would apply for after you graduated. How many of you are graduating this coming year? At some point, can you raise it a little higher? Okay, so a good number of you. How many of you just finished your first year of undergrad? Okay, cool. So we've got a nice cross-section. So a couple of these will be especially relevant for those of you who are a little earlier in your career, and some of them for a little bit later in your career. So the Goldwater Scholarship, named after Barry Goldwater, this is a $7,500 award for students planning to pursue careers in STEM. This is one you could apply for as a sophomore or junior. If you apply as a sophomore and you win, you get 2 years worth of funding. What is great is, of course, money, free money, who doesn't want that, but it's also the networks. So if you apply for some of these awards, like the UDL that I'll mention, the Goldwater, you get connected with fellow students and with people with expertise in your areas of interest that you might not have been able to tap quite so easily without the network provided by the scholarship. So Shelley mentioned GPA and having strong grades. Really, for all of these fellowships, you do need strong grades. Now, some of them, the bar is very, very high, and some of them, it's really not that high. It's not like you're expected to have a 4.0. In the Goldwater, I will say that is one where the GPA expectation, although it says it's a 3.0, really our average nominee from one year to the next usually has about a 3.8 GPA or higher. So you should just know that going in. It is not to say don't apply if you have a 3.1 or a 3.2, but the average student who is selected for that scholarship does have a GPA that trends pretty high. As far as the application materials, I don't know that that's so useful for you to know about at this moment. I think it's more useful for you to know what does this scholarship even do and when would you go about applying for it. So if you are currently, if you're a rising sophomore or junior, think about applying for this next year. And the application deadline is late in the fall semester, and you put the finishing touches on your application early in the spring, and we send it forward with a formal nomination for you. We have a faculty committee that evaluates all the applications that come in. We get great applications every year, And we get students who participated in UBRP who apply every year too. The astronaut scholarship, anybody want to be an astronaut? Cool, you don't have to be. The astronaut scholarship is a STEM-based award, and we actually have had a few students from the U of A who do want to be astronauts or work in space science who've applied for and won this, but you really just have to have a commitment to a career in STEM. So we've had people in biological sciences every year who apply for this award, and at least every couple of years who become a nominee for us. So this is another case of a really cool network. This award was funded by former astronauts, so they put money into this to strengthen our competitiveness in the world, to have excellence in STEM with our undergraduates in the United States. And so again, you can apply as a sophomore or a junior, and we can nominate 2. Goldwater, we can nominate 4. And again, some of those pieces that Shelley was talking about that you put together for an application: personal statement, statement of proposed interest in research. And again, it's coming in with a focus, but knowing within yourself, and the reviewers also knowing, this might not be exactly what you do. But we're interested right now in how you think about science or engineering. What is a project you can imagine yourself doing? So you can't get too caught up in, oh, I'm locked into this thing for the rest of my life, and I have to be an astronaut, or no, you don't have to do any of those things. You just have to demonstrate that facility in STEM. Udall Scholarship, there are 2 categories of eligible students. One is any student committed to a career related to the environment. The other category is Native students committed to tribal policy or healthcare. And we can again nominate sophomores and juniors for that award. The network there is really remarkable, with getting to interact with people from the Udall family, folks representing government, lots of different policy areas that I think can really advantage you for pursuit of a career that connects to the Udall goals. This is another one that's named after a U.S. Congressman, Congressman Mo Udall. Are any of you from Tucson? Some of you? So you know Udall, the name Udall. And I would hope Arizonans in general would know the name Udall, and Goldwater for that matter. That's kind of cool. I guess I hadn't thought about that too much, that 2 of the really big STEM-oriented awards are both named after Arizona people. So this one is another scholarship you would apply for in the spring. Both the astronaut and the Udall are scholarships you could apply for early in the spring semester. You go through the process of getting a University of Arizona nomination. And you're selected for this one on the basis of leadership, public service. Are you committed to environmentally oriented careers that can take on a whole bunch of different iterations? So that's where Danielle and I can come in. If you have questions about your fit, if your long-term goals are a match, we can help you sort through some of those things. And then the Amgen. This is a great scholarship that provides some funding during the summer at one of those 10 institutions that's listed there. So you would have to be a sophomore, junior, or non-graduating senior. So some of you, this would not be a fit because you're close to your finish line already. But others of you who have a few years ahead of you, this could be a nice way of leveraging one experience into another one for a summer opportunity at one of those institutions. And then the Churchill. We have had good success with the Churchill Scholarship, and this one is really, really, really competitive. There are only 15 of these awards given out every year. And we have had, boy, I think we've had 5 Churchill Scholars in the last 7 years or so. This is an award that would allow you to do a 1-year experience, an MPhil it's called, it's a 1-year master's, at Cambridge University, at Churchill College. And if you're not familiar with the college system in British education, it's very different than how we structure and organize higher ed in the US. There's someone who I think was Travis Sawyer, a UBRP student back in the day, do you know? Okay, well, I think he might have been, I might be wrong on that, but we have several U of A alums who were Churchill Scholars who have since come back to the States, one of which is Travis Sawyer, who is now a PhD student at the university. But they talk about how very different the British system is And if you have a real interest in an international experience, in connecting your scholarly interests with a global community, finding out how do people do science in the UK, how's that similar to what happens here at the University of Arizona or in the States? How is it different? What might I gain from connecting with someone there who has a different approach maybe, or who has different networks that I would find hard to tap into as an American student? This would be a great scholarship to apply for. It is, as many of them are, not just about your excellence as a prospective researcher. It's about all those other things you bring to the table. So for our Churchill scholars who've been selected, they're very engaged on campus in leadership activities. Doesn't look the same from one person to the next, so there's no formula, but they just want to see evidence that you use your talents in ways that extend beyond the intellectual, but go into service and research realms as well. So that is one you would apply for in the fall, and we are able to nominate 2 students for that. A couple of photos on the right. Bottom right is Travis, that's who I was referring to a little bit ago. And Jeannie Wilkening, a couple of years ago, we had 2 students who were selected for the Churchill. That's very unusual to have both of your university's nominees selected out of 15 people total who win the award. So that was a banner year. Both of them also won the Gold Water Scholarship. And then above them, any of you engineering students had Professor Schlentz as a faculty member? All right, she's real, right? So she's a real person. It's not just like a fake photo. She is a recent, relatively recent Rhodes Scholar. That's one I didn't mention. But if you do have a real interest in British scholarships, there are a plethora of options for doing study or research in the UK that aren't just confined to STEM fields. The ones I've mentioned are STEM-oriented, but there are the Rhodes, the Marshall, the Mitchell, the Fulbright. These are opportunities you could tap into, whether you're interested in the arts or social sciences or STEM-oriented fields. And so Justine completed her doctoral degree in engineering at Oxford several years ago, and now she's on faculty here at the U of A. We had a Rhodes Scholar last year. I don't know if you remember reading that in the paper. Leah Crowder, I don't know if anyone knows her, but she will begin her Rhodes Scholarship in October of this year. So she just graduated from the U of A. So I tell you that, again, as Shelley's pointing out, they're not superhuman people. I mean, they're remarkable, but they're regular folks who just happen to have had some courage. And I think that's the biggest takeaway I would want you to leave with is applying for these awards, you will certainly not win if you don't apply for anything. And sometimes the biggest hurdle mentally is, do I even have the guts to pull the trigger on an initial application? It does require that self-reflection. It requires you to be really honest with yourself about who you are and what your goals are. Some people are not down for that. Some people maybe would rather just be a little more in the moment and not think so far ahead. Some people, even if you're unclear about where the outcome will take you, feel like they're ready to plunge their toe into that world. And I haven't had any student ever tell me, maybe they wouldn't tell me, I don't know, that it was a real waste of time to put effort into an application. And those are people who don't always win the scholarships either. It's a real advantage. And for some, I've had some students who put an application together and have said, you know, one of the things I got out of it is I realized, actually, that's not what I want to do. I really dug in. I thought about what would the implications of pursuing this field of research or study be, and I decided I actually like this well enough to complete my project, but I want to shift gears and do something really different. So we can really help you. We can ask you the right kinds of questions to get you thinking about which of these awards might fit, how would it advance your longer term goals. But at least do yourself a favor and take the first couple of steps to consider it, to look a little bit into the fellowships world, and then get in touch with Danielle, make an appointment with her to see what kinds of opportunities are actually the right fit for you. I think I'm more or less finished. Oh, actually no, got a couple more slides here. So just to reiterate some things that Shelley already said. So strong academics, getting to know professors and employers, that's another one where courage comes into play. We had honors orientation this morning, so incoming first-year students that we were talking to this morning. And one of the things we talked to them about is having a growth mindset. So recognizing that when you start college or whenever you start something new, failure is not just possible, it's inevitable. And if you don't ever fail, that means you're probably not pushing yourself or risking, and you're living a little bit more of a safe kind of life. So having a growth mindset means stepping out in there and saying, I don't know who this faculty member is. I'm not content to just be a face in an auditorium. I'm going to go chat with that person. And I think probably most of you are pretty good at that already. But if you're not, I would suggest that in your time left as an undergraduate that you step forward and have a little courage and be willing to risk not having a sure outcome of what happens when you put yourself out there. Get more involved in different kinds of roles, adopt leadership roles, and that's not just for the sake of saying, oh, I'm a leader. It's actually what can happen that will grow you by taking something on that might not be straightforward. Like you could be a leader and have a title, and that's one kind of leadership, but that's not really digging in effective leadership. Where can you make a mark? Where can your talents be put to good use for some kind of experience or opportunity that wouldn't have the same traction if somebody else were in that role besides you? And then that long-term goals and personal narratives that you can work on. So some of you said you just finished your first year. What are some scholarships? Most of these I haven't touched on, or a few of these I haven't touched on. If you're a first-year student, you've just finished, and you have some interest in studying abroad, you might think about the Critical Language Scholarship or the Boren. These are scholarships that allow you to study abroad in less commonly studied countries, to study languages that are also less commonly studied. So if you have a desire to go somewhere other than Western Europe, other than an English-speaking country, then this is one you might think about, those two applying for. You can apply for them also sophomore year. There's the Udall, the Goldwater, those other ones. Same for the junior year, and then senior year, it's that suite of British scholarships. Most of the ones that are listed there are the British awards. There's also the Boren Fellowship for to support graduate study. And then this is a contact info for me and for Danielle. So if you want to take out your phone and take a photo of it, that's great. Otherwise, I think that you'll be sharing the presentation with everybody. We've got like 4 minutes if anybody has a question before we wrap up. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm in the speech language and hearing department, which is a little weird mix between like almost like a teacher and like health professional, like a scientist. So what kind of like one of these other people?
Yeah, so you're kind of the inherently interdisciplinary kind of role, right? You're a speech and hearing person. So there's a couple of different things. You have to read the fine print for the STEM scholarships and see how that matches with the actual work you would do to see if it fits. And sometimes I would say it will, and sometimes it won't. The other scholarship I didn't mention that I should have is the Fulbright. I think I mentioned it, but just in passing. Anybody know about Fulbright? Some of you have heard of it? That's another federally funded award that you can apply for as a graduating senior or as a graduate student for about a year of funding in one of 140 different countries that you can apply to. And some people apply for an English teaching assistantship. So depending on your particular focus with speech and hearing, that could be interesting. Some people apply for a research or study grant, and you could do that right after you graduate. You could leverage this experience you have this summer and do some kind of extension of it overseas. You want to be mindful of language requirements for the host country and whether it makes sense for your long-term goals. Some people don't apply for Fulbright until they are enrolled graduate students, and it could be part of your dissertation research. So that's one I would especially highlight for you to think about in the future. Yeah?
For the Fulbright, how many students you guys recommend?
How many do we recommend? We can nominate as many students as apply. And I'll just brag a little bit that this year we had 19 Fulbright scholars selected from the U of A, which is really good. Anything above 10 is usually a good threshold to hit. So we had a banner year. And actually, Danielle was a Fulbright scholar not very long ago, so has her own experience of knowing what it's like, and I think will be really good at giving you some guidance on an application. And just started Monday.
Yes.
So she's brand new. Yeah.
Remind me of the USDK Fulbright.
Okay, yeah, so there's also a US-UK Fulbright for some of you students who are a little closer to the beginning of your undergraduate career. There's a summer opportunity through the Fulbright called the US-UK Fulbright. And we could provide more details if you have an interest in a summer experience in the UK that is funded by the Fulbright.